Hi everybody, welcome to Take10, the daily art challenge show where I set aside 10 minutes somehow and make something for myself. Painting, drawing, whatever it takes to make a mark on some surface. The idea being that I force myself to actually commit some time to drawing so that I don't spend days without drawing, which has happened before. I'm trying to avoid that. I actually recorded a video a few minutes ago of me drawing this fella in pencil here on the pad, but apparently the camera decided to shut off about 3 seconds after I started it, and I didn't notice until it was too late. So although you don't get to see the pencil drawing being done, you will get to see the second stage where I grab some markers and go to town on doing some shading and coloring. As I was saying before, well, you didn't hear it, but today's inspirational artist is Salvador Dali, because I've been thinking a lot about how Surrealism's had an influence on my aesthetic and my process. Not that I use dream imagery from my dreams as subject matter, but because I like to try to sort of make my art in some way resemble that sort of dream state, in particular adding humor to situations you wouldn't normally expect to find it in. And that might be something as simple as doing a cute version of a frog monster, like this guy. Or it could be, I don't know, a knight on a battlefield kneeling over his fallen companions, and you notice there's a clown horn sticking out from under someone's shield. Subtle things. It could be all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be overt either. It could be something where you don't even, it's my thoughts at the time are weird. I try to play it straight, but it's going to come through. That's how art works. And I was talking before about how innovation is really just repetition filtered through your own experiences. And it's interpreted as innovation by people who are unfamiliar with the original or unfamiliar enough with your style so they can't see the original's influence anymore. And I really think that's all it is to new stuff. That's what makes new things. So you shouldn't worry about copying anybody. It's a great way to learn. Just don't get to the point where that's all you can do is copy someone else's art, or photograph, or whatever it is. It's good to learn how to draw from life and from photos and that kind of stuff, but ultimately, if you want to make fun art, I don't know, you want to create something, not just interpret something. You need to be able to take the things you've learned and turn them into something that doesn't exist. Like, I've studied frogs a little bit, so I've got a little bit of their facial anatomy down, so when I do something like this guy, he strongly resembles a frog because of my studies of frogs. I'm not looking at a picture of a frog right now. I'm not using any reference at all for these drawings, and that's not a brag, that's probably just it's actually to the detriment of these drawings, probably. But my point is that the reference is not a cheat. The reference is not a crutch unless you let it be. And no one should feel ashamed of drawing from someone else's art or photos, because that's sort of how we learn. Again, just don't rely on it so much that you can't do it without it. Yeah, you use it to get better, and I think you'll be well off. Anyway, I was saying something about markers, so I'm going to try this new one here. Lay down some base color. It's just a Marby alcohol-based marker, sort of an off-brand. They're not too bad. I had some other ones before. This should be a really pale, kind of greenish-yellow color. And as always, blotting the page with a piece of notebook paper, or just a printer paper. It's important. So I'm going to do this the other way. I was watching a Will Ferrell video today. And I've already done this video. He's already been my inspirational artist for once because he's really good at markers, and he's actually got me into using markers. Before that, I had no interest in even trying it, but seeing what he can do with it, I really like it. Anyway, I was watching a video of him today and observing his technique again, and I'd forgotten that he usually does. He'll do this either one of two ways here. He'll lay down the dark shadows with the fine tip like this, and then go back over the whole thing with the broad tip, once it's dried out. Theoretically, that should let the original marks be darker than what I just did. Let's see if it works. You can also do it the opposite way. You put down the base color and then you go back in with the tip. The idea is that different levels or different applications of the same color can give you tones. I think I mentioned this before. And I'd like to apologize if I repeat myself a lot in these videos. I'm sure I do. I'm of the opinion that these videos are always someone's first. So if I repeat myself too much, I'm sorry about that, but I'm trying to be helpful to people who might be watching for the first time. I'll try to keep it interesting and not very preachy about technique or anything, unless I'm doing a tutorial thing, which I won't be doing in this series, but maybe the next series. Alright. And again, you'll notice the same thing. I said this before. The pencil marks, if you go over them with the like this and let the alcohol seep in, it'll actually seal the graphite into the paper. So that won't erase now. It's unerasable now. I've been to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. a few times throughout my school days, and they have a really nice Dali there. I believe it's a religious piece. I can't remember if it's the Last Supper or a crucifixion scene. What it is exactly. It's really large. They have it sort of in the stairwell, so you just kind of come upon it, which I think is probably really cool for something like that. Because it's kind of imposing. It's big. They might not still have it. It's been years since I was there, but I always loved that painting. I thought it was really cool. I know Dali's famous for his melting clocks and his eggs with ants forming sexual organs and all kinds of crazy dream imagery and stuff, but I always kind of liked that. Because it was his interpretation of something fairly common in the art world. So you really get to see more of him in something like that. It's like when people do covers of songs, you get to see their style because you're familiar with the original song. You know how it goes. So anything they change, this is all them. I like covers, generally speaking, if I like the artist doing the cover. So it's cool to see that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're interested at all in the kind of art where you want to ask yourself what the artist was thinking when they made it, it's not just something to look at. It is pretty. He's got very good technique. I would recommend checking him out. Also the story of his life and his personality and everything is really crazy. He's a character. He's what most people think of, say, when they think of kooky artists. He's pretty much what they're talking about. I like that kind of thing. You gotta have characters in life. You gotta have people pushing the limits, so you know where they are. Wow, that doesn't leave a lot of tone, does it? Maybe if I let it dry completely before I hit it again. It might just be that it's such a light tone that you're not going to get more than that out of it. That's quite possible. If I was serious about this drawing, I wanted something real out of it, I should have set up a light source before I started all this tone and shading stuff. It's always good to notice the things you should have done when it's too late to do them. It's funny, usually I do a lot of monsters, as you probably noticed on the channel, but my monsters generally fall into two types, and I don't mean like what kind of monster they are, I mean like their personalities. There's either the serious rampaging fighting monster, like enraged, right? Or at the very least perturbed. There's a pouting lip thing. A lot. There's a lot of screaming too. So my monsters are generally either screaming or pouting. But there's also this other thing I try to do, which is like the goofy, cute monster. They're generally not acting as a threat in any way, like this guy. They're just kind of being themselves, hanging out. They just look like they just sort of walked up on them and they were like doing something else, and they turn to you and go, oh, hey. I like those kind too. Don't get me wrong, a werewolf howling at the moon and tearing open villagers is really cool. And the Frankenstein monster, throwing lab equipment around is awesome. But sometimes you just want to see a goofy creature. Just sort of smiling. Chilling out, no threat, just hanging out. Switch up colors here. Got kind of a pale khaki here I try to use. This will be quite a bit darker, and also add some warm tones to what I'm doing. So let's see what that does for the shadows. Lately I've been thinking I'll do these markers and then finish them off with colored pencil, like I did my other sketchbook. If you see my sketchbook I have up on Gumroad, and the one I'm selling in print, there's a YouTube video of me flipping through it. It's all like marker drawings, like this, on tone paper, finished off with colored pencils. Technique I learned from Will Terrell. Other people too, but Will Terrell got me into it. Yeah, I really like it. I like the results you get. I like the subtlety of the markers and the control of the colored pencils. That's why I like painting so much. You can blend, you can make light. You can make things look like they have light on them, and that's the coolest thing in the world to me. The illusion. Says, I'm sure you're aware, this is just a piece of paper. There's no light hitting this guy. He doesn't exist in 3 dimensions. If I can make it look like he does, I think that's pretty cool. The tip on this is a little worn out already. It's not that old. I think I've noticed about marker comparison. I've got a bunch of different kinds of markers here, and I even have some Copics, Copics, whatever. The sort of industry standard. I don't have any Prismacolors, but I've got Copics. And I've got a bunch of other brands. And I don't know, maybe the Copics are worth the money. They're very expensive. But they seem to last so much longer. The tips are made of stronger material. They don't go blunt and chewy when I do the scrubbing stuff on the paper. The colors are pretty strong. Even the light tones are quite strong. They just seem to last. I haven't had any go bad on me yet. I've had several of these other bulk brands go bad in a few weeks. I don't use them that often. Maybe that's part of the problem, but I don't know. I think maybe in the world of art supplies, sometimes you get ripped off and sometimes you just get what you pay for. I think they may have just been the industry leader because they deliver the best product. But again, I'm no marker master. I don't do these things a lot. I haven't tried every brand out there. I haven't even tried the other big one, Prismacolor. I hear they're really good. All I know is the ones I have, the Copics, are much better than the regular ones. Even these new ones, which are fairly good. Just the tip's already, you can't really use it as a brush tip anymore. It's just kind of a soft bullet tip, which means no real control. I just switch to the chisel and use the edge of that. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I can actually get a finer edge out of that. The ink is fine in these. It's just that that tip is worn out already. I do a lot of scrubbing, I guess. I'm pretty hard on paintbrushes too, I noticed. My technique is probably just too rough. I've probably said this before too, but I apologize for falling silent sometimes. Sometimes it takes a lot of concentration from my tiny little tired brain to move this marker around the way I'm trying to do it. And sometimes I just don't know what to say. I feel like sometimes I spout the same stuff too much. So if I don't have something interesting to say in the moment, I tend to be quiet. Well, that's not very dramatic watching for the audience. I apologize, but I'm trying to get better. I wonder if this highlighter makes his mouth look like it curves in. Kind of weird. It's funny how you can do some stuff in a light wash marker and then you just grab a darker marker, and if you go over it once, it disappears. It's like, oh, that whole thing you did before, not even part of the equation anymore. It's still there, it's just really subtle. You're probably not getting any of it on the camera. I can just barely see the yellow underneath all this. That's cool. The thing about alcohol markers is the alcohol is supposed to reactivate the pigment as you go, meaning smooth, soft blending. And that seems to be a bit of a hit or miss proposition. Again, Copics are the best at it. I'm not actually using paper that you would use for markers, generally speaking. You're supposed to use a bleed-proof paper and in white so that your colors are more vibrant. I think the mid-tone, tying everything together, is really cool. I just like the way it looks. Alright, that is nowhere near finished as usual, but that's probably my 10 minutes, unfortunately. I noticed towards the end I did try to actually get a light source going, something sort of this way, more or less. It also helps if you can, even in a broad sense, kind of ground them with shadow, once you have that light source direction. It doesn't have to be anything, you can do a circle if you want, just something to put them on the ground. You know? Alright, so I'll be hitting this with some colored pencils later on. But for now, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for keeping up with the challenge. I'm almost done now, actually. This is 23, I think. Verify that later. This is episode 23, and I've only got a week left to go on my 30-day challenge. And thank everybody for following along. I'm glad these will be up here so I can sort of see what I was doing. As I've said before, after this challenge is over, I'm going to switch to sort of a twice-a-week video thing, and it'll be longer form. With or without narration, I'm not really sure. I might do something where I'll just say what I feel at the time, and if there's long stretches of silence, I'll speed it up, so you guys don't have to sit there through silence. Or maybe you guys can let me know how you feel about that, because sometimes speed painting is not as interesting when there's no sound, and if you're trying to learn something, speed painting can be kind of detrimental. But let me know what you think, if you have an opinion on that. At any rate, they'll be doing videos less frequently, but probably longer, and that'll be starting in about a week or so. I'm not going to take a hiatus or anything after this, so I'll just be doing videos every once in a while. They'll be better, hopefully. You guys keep working on your stuff. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.